Okay, so we are having vertical and horizontal equipment, and there are variety of supports which are discussed next. So leg support is the one which is simplest one of all and most economical. However, it has capacity weight carrying limitations, so that needs to be accounted for. The leg type of supports, the point to be noted is that uh, they can be braced, so you can have supports which are cross braced or sway braced. The difference between them, the bracing is the legs are stiffened by adding cross members between them. By the difference between cross bracing and sway bracing is that in cross bracings the members are rigid, that is they are like sections, steel sections, whereas in sway bracing they are tension only members or cable like structures. And yeah, in the if you are providing braces, then it occupies space around the bottom of your structure. So any pipeline that you have to take in that region, it provides certain constraints. So that point is to be noted. The next more common, same as the leg support, is the lug support. So lugs are as shown in this picture. So this is lug support. So in this, it is simply a bracket on which the support, the vessel is supported. So there will be steel structure, not the one which is shown in this picture. That is just a temporary transportation structure. But actual plant will have steel structure on which these brackets would be anchored with the help of anchor bolts, and then the design would be the vessel will be supported. So this leg support and lug supports are for both horizontal and vertical equipment. So there is no restriction on their usage as to the equipment type. When you have more capacity, higher capacity equipment, the leg and lug support become extremely big. And also, if you can see the previous picture, the bracket which is attached to a small portion, and if a large reaction is acting at this particular point because of the equipment weight, there will be high local stresses will be induced in this region, and that poses a difficulty in designing these leg and lug supports because of the heavy concentration of load at narrow region, and there they cannot be used. So at that point, for more uniform distribution, you provide a support ring around all around the circumference of the vessel, and this ring is in turn supported onto the steel structure which is around the vessel. So onto this ring, you can attach further brackets or lugs as shown in this particular figure. So this is the ring, and you are having a lug which is attached to the ring and then further get supported to the vessel. These pictures are during transportation, so they are not actual position. So these are the equipment what is shown here is a vertical equipment, and during transportation. So that is why it appears may give a wrong picture to you. The ring support, one point that should be noted is that they are not to be used for high temperature service. So for high temperature service, they are not uh, recommended, because in that case, because of the thermal expansion of the vessel, it may interfere with the clearance that you have provided between the ring and the vessel outside surface, and will cause problem. Thermal stresses would be induced in the vessel as well as the ring. So they are not recommended for high temperature service. So for high temperature service, you have to use, if it is a vertical vessel, then it will be skirt side type of support, what we are going to discuss next. Or we have to use, if it is horizontal vessel, then it is saddle support. Okay, the load types which need to be considered in any design of the supports, in addition to the dead weight, you have to consider the wind and seismic loads. So they are the main loads which govern the design of any support. And for estimating these loads, there are many, every country has got its own national standards. So in India, we have IS 875 Part 3 for wind load and IS 1893 for seismic load calculation. Apart from that, mainly these design codes are evolved from civil engineers' point of view. So all the structures that they design, they need to be designed to withstand seismic as well as the wind loads, and in cold countries into snow load. So that I have not shown here. So the last two codes, ASC is American Society of Civil Engineers. So that code as well as Uniform Bedding Code, they are more exhaustive and give many detailed calculations. So in case you land up in support design problems, the UBC or ASC code will provide some sort of solution for more complex combination of loads or some situations which are not addressed in the national code. But essentially, to get the load, the climatic data is available in the national load. That is not available in UBC or ASC. They only cater to different variety of design methodologies and calculation types. Another point to be noted is that wind and seismic are rarely considered together. So it is either wind load or it is seismic load. So either of them would be considered in the design. Except for very, very critical components like nuclear vessels, you may consider part 50% wind load and 80% seismic or something like that combination can be considered. Later on, the skirt support is one of the sturdiest type of support and also the costliest in terms of the material and fabrication cost. In the skirt type of support, as the name suggests, it's just a cylindrical structure which is attached onto which the vessel is mounted. So you can see in this picture, so this part is the skirt support, and the skirt support, the green part is the skirt support, and at the bottom of the skirt support, what you see is the base ring. So base ring can have, will always have a base plate, which later on in the calculations we have considered. So this is the base plate. And you may have additional reinforcement in case the loads are very high, then you may have some kind of brackets and a top ring. If the loads are very high, then you will have the top ring in addition to the base plate also at the bottom of the skirt support. In the skirt support design, one of the most important region is where the skirt is getting attached to the vessel. So this particular region is of special critical importance. So the stresses here are highly localized, although they are surrounded throughout the circumference. This is an important region, and another important parameter in skirt design is the difference between mean center line of the skirt and the mean center line of the vessel. So this offset, if it is high, it causes a circumferential bending moment all over the. So if this offset is very high, you will get a bending moment at this particular region, which because of which the skirt thickness will be more than what you will require otherwise. So as far as possible, the skirt mean radius is matched with the vessel mean radius so that the load transfer is with minimal moment component. And also, as we have seen in the ring support, if the temperature of the vessel is very high, then there will be high thermal stresses in this region because vessel will try to expand, whereas the skirt being exposed to the atmosphere, it will be cooler for most of the region, and there will be thermal stresses there. So in that case, some special arrangement like the skirt has been provided with flexibility, which will by means of providing what is known as finger type of arrangement, so that you provide some kind of slots near the junction so that the flexibility of the junction increases. The point to be noted by you at this point is that at high temperature, the skirt supports can be used, and if they are to be used, then certain design additional design features need to be taken into account. The next important support, that is horizontal vessels, are supported on what is known as saddle support. So saddle supports, we are not covering the calculation part in this particular course. The saddles, similar to the skirt support, have got their base plate. So this is the base plate on which you will have the anchor holes, and anchor bolts will be grouted into the foundation. And then you have the steel structure. And for reinforcing the region, you will get some kind of, this is known as wear plate, which, like the reinforcing plates in the nozzle design, they provide the additional strengthening in this local region. The saddle design is done as per special calculations known as Zik analysis. So that part is mentioned here. So this is the design methodology is based on the method given by Zik, and it involves calculation of various stresses in different regions. So this slide is given mainly for your bird's eye view of the different types of stresses involved in around the saddle or in the saddle design. And of course, no calculations are involved. One of the most critical region is known as horn of the saddle. So this particular region, so this region is known as the horn of saddle. So the stresses here in general are maximum, and they need to be properly checked. Okay, next we move to the design procedure for the skirt design. So in the skirt design, the loads which you need to take is, one is the dead weight load, that is the first. The second is the bending stress due to the wind load. And third is bending stress due to seismic load. So out of 2 and 3, only one of them, whichever is higher, will be considered. So if you have a vessel, so I'll be providing the support at the base. So the wind load will be acting. So wind velocity varies as per the altitude. So the wind loads will keep on increasing as the altitude or the height of the equipment increases. So this transverse load, because of the wind, it will cause a bending moment, which will be maximum at the base. So this entire vessel acts as a cantilever, which is supported at the base plate of the skirt. So in these calculations, essentially you are calculating what is the bending stress at the bottom of skirt. So that is what you are doing. And onto that, you are superimposing the compressive stress arising from the self weight of the equipment. And that is what these bottom two formulae give. So the net tensile force will be subtraction of um, the tensile stress because of bending, and the compressive stress is to be subtracted, and net compressive stress is addition of compressive stress due to the bending and due to the self weight. Okay, how to calculate the stresses? The formula are given. So they are plain simple force by area type of formula. For calculating the wind load, you have to consider two factors. The K1 factor is a shape factor. So if your vessel, if you look from the top, and there are many pipings and platforms which are surrounding the vessel, the obstruction to the wind increases. So if this is the wind direction, because of these external attachments, the obstruction increases. So the K1, which is known as shape factor, that range is given as 0.7 to 0.85. So here, for the convenience of classroom discussion, I'm directly giving the number. In actual code, there is a table which gives for different types of obstructions what factor is to be considered. So here, for the simplicity, we are saying that if there are a lot of attachments, you consider a higher factor towards 0.85, and if there are no attachments, then it is 0.7. The second factor is related to the dynamic response of the vessel. when it is subjected to wind loads. So again, there are detailed calculations are there. What you are looking at here is one of the simple or preliminary check. If this check passes, then there is no need to do the detailed dynamic analysis. For doing the preliminary check, you need to decide what is the period of vibration of the vessel. So that essentially gives you idea about the stiffness of the vessel. And depending on the period of vibration, the factor K2 is either 1 or 2. And once you get the values of this factor, the wind load is essentially, since wind load varies at with altitude, the vessel is broken into different sections. So you have section 1, section 2, and so on. And wind load is separately calculated at each section, and then all those forces, their moment at the base is calculated and summed up. So that is what uh, that equation here, total wind moment is summation of all individual section moments. And then finally you calculate the stress by formula M by Z. Similar calculations are there for the seismic case, except here there are no sections required for simple vessels which are having a uniform cross section. However, if your weight distribution is different, that is, you have some thick sections or some sections are having heavy internals or heavy external attachments, then you have to consider their weight and seismic force acting on them separately, and then take summation of those individual moments. So here, for the simplicity, I have given just a simple formula, assuming that vessel is having uniform thickness and dimension from bottom to top. In such case, the seismic moment would be given by the formula given here, which involves a seismic coefficient, which in turn depends on which seismic zone you are in, which is given in the national code, and what is the period of vibration, which in turn implies what is stiffness of your structure, and based on that, the factor C is given. Okay, next is, so based on that, you calculate the net stress on the vessel, on the skirt, and then that is maximum of vessel, the wind moment and seismic moment, you calculate whichever is governing, you add it to the dead weight condition and then calculate the net stress. Okay, the base plate design. So in the base plate design, you are essentially to calculate what is the thickness of base plate and what is the width of base plate. So yesterday Chandan has suggested or pointed out a mistake. So the DSK in the calculations is the mean diameter of the skirt, and this particular figure is corrected here. In the initial version, this was shown as the inside diameter, or some error was there. And this L is also to be considered from the mean center line of the skirt. So these are the two unknowns to be determined in the base plate design. Because the skirt is undergoing bending, so there is a bending moment acting on this skirt, which is prevented by the anchor bolts, which are anchoring the skirt by means of base plate. So as a result of this base plate is subjected to the reaction bending moment. So the formula which is given here, thickness of base plate, is derived based on the bending of a flat plate. So that is the derivation is not covered here, but that can be derived by using simple strength of material formula. And for calculating the for designing the base plate, one more check is the below the base plate there is a concrete foundation most of the time. If the steel structure is there, then this calculation is not required. But most of the time, these heavy vessels, or 99% of times, such heavy vessels will be mounted on concrete foundation. So concrete has got a certain allowable compressive stress, which is in the range of 5 to 20 MPa. And you have to ensure that the width of base plate is such that the pressure below the base plate is below the allowable compressive stress. So that is the two calculations involved here. For the design of anchor bolts, as I said earlier, the bending moment which acts on the base of the skirt, it tries to uproot the anchors, and that depends on how much is the weight of the vessel. So if this is your vessel and you are anchoring it here, so if this is the overturning moment because of wind load, you will have the vessel will have tendency to move in this direction. So this is the way vessel will try to bend in the exaggerated manner if only this moment is acting. So one side of the anchors would be in tension and others would have negligible load. So this is like the bolted brackets what we designed in machine design in previous semester. But in this case, in addition to this moment, there is weight of this equipment is also acting. So the weight of the equipment will prevent, it will act in the opposite direction and it will try to bring back the base plate to its original position. So those two effects are considered in this calculation. So we are considering the worst scenario when the vessel is lightest. When the vessel is lightest, so here W min indicates that vessel is lightest. Why we are considering lightest? Because in that case, the capacity of that self weight to bring back the vessel to the horizontal position is least. So that is why in this calculation, instead of in all other calculation, we are considering the highest weight of the equipment. In this case, we are considering the minimum weight because that will cause the highest tension in the bolts. So that is the point. The number of bolts are brought by this empirical formula, and then stress per bolt and then size of bolt is calculated. So based on this, we had a detailed calculation, which I'm not covering here, but this is the overall method of doing the calculations. So this covers the first topic, that is the design of bolts, and I also have issued a quiz on this particular session. The Google Meet doesn't have the feature of polling like we had in the Zoom meeting. So we cannot have interactive quiz session here. Okay, so before I go to some of the quiz questions which are interesting, let me have, if you have any questions on the support design. So if you have any questions, please ask now before I move to the some questions from the quiz. Yes.
Hello, sir. Sir, wind pressure decreases with increase in altitude. So why do we take maximum load at topmost point in the vessel? Wind load.
If I said that, then it is wrong. I don't. The correct statement is that the wind load increases with the altitude. So higher you go, there is more wind velocity, and there is more wind pressure. So sorry if I said other way around. So that would be a mistake. Wind pressure increases with the altitude. Wind velocity, and because of that, wind pressure increases with the velocity. So higher you go, there will be more wind pressure and more wind load. Was that your question or something else you are asking?
Sir, wind pressure decreases with altitude, no?
No, it doesn't decrease. The wind velocity always increases. The wind velocity is minimum at the ground level. If you are staying at the 17th floor of your building, you will experience that wind velocity is very high there.
Sir,
Yes.
so I think that it is a drag and not the wind pressure that you are pointing out to. Because pressure is inversely proportional to velocity. So the drag due to the wind speed would increase with altitude.
No, the drag part you are talking about is taken care by the shape factor. In the sense, the force conversion from the wind pressure to the force is done by the drag force calculation. So there the fluid mechanics will come into picture. But if your presumption is that the wind pressure decreases with altitude, maybe you are from this wave team or something. What is the basis for that statement?
Well, we have the Bernoulli equation.
Okay.
So with that we know that half rho v square plus the equation is constant. So
Okay.
if we go to a greater height,
Right.
then we have effects on the pressure and all. With velocity also we have effects. So as the height increases and as the velocity increases, the pressure would decrease. But as speed is
Which pressure
increasing,
you are talking about?
so the pressure on that
The
altitude.
barometric pressure will decrease.
So I think everyone is talking about that itself, sir.
No, we are not talking about that scale of altitudes. So we are talking about the vessels which are of at the most 60 or 80 meters in height. So in that case, the decrease in the barometric pressure will not be significant, but the increase in wind velocity is very high, which we every day we can experience. If you are at the ground and wind is blowing, the what pressure you feel at the ground and what pressure you feel at the terrace are different.
Right.
And this is not by common sense. I'm saying this is the calculation is means the wind design code. If you refer to, you will get a chart which gives you the velocity versus height graph, which is which it increases with height with altitude.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question. In this slide, we are saying that weight due to vessel will try to bring back the vessel against the wind load.
Right.
But if the CG, so we are taking the minimum load weight of vessel.
Right.
So if CG uh, goes some beyond certain limit, then that additional bending moment will act due to weight as well as wind in the same
That is
direction.
correct. But we don't want the vessel to go in that collapse mode. So we want to prevent, rather the weight will try to prevent that overturning by its natural tendency to bring it down. So whenever wind tries to topple the vessel and there is a slight upliftment, the weight will immediately try to push it back down. So at that time, that is what we are talking here. What you are saying is correct, that once a certain angle of tilt is there, then weight will add to the transverse moment and then they will lead to catastrophe. What we are talking here is what happens when both of them are acting when the vessel is vertical.
Okay.
So as I said in the question for this skirt support design, higher offset between the vessel mean diameter and skirt mean diameter. So first option is not correct. No thermal stresses is not a problem. It causes, the third option is correct. That is a higher bending stresses would be caused in the skirt wall. Okay, can you answer this question? For vessels operating at high temperature, thicker skirt wall thickness is better. So it's true or false? So for high temperature vessels, you will prefer to have thick wall thickness of skirt or thin wall thickness?
Thin.
Thicker. Okay, so why thin? In the sense, some thickness will come out, but if it is thin, it is better, or thick, it is better. So you are saying it is thin is better. So why thin is better?
So if the thickness is thin, then it can adjust itself during the temperature change.
How it will adjust itself? what you're saying is partly correct. If it is thin, then it is more flexible, so it can
Yes.
have less stress for the given displacement. So thermal expansion is a displacement control load. For a given displacement, a thinner body will have less stress.
Yes.
So that is what is the reason. Okay, the design of base plate is dependent on compressive stress acting on the base plate. So is it correct? Does the design of base plate depend on compressive stress acting on the base plate? So as we said, design of base plate involves thickness of base plate and width, that L factor, L parameter in the calculation. So these parameter, do they get affected by compressive stress acting on the base plate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because of?
Because of the weight of the vessel.
Okay, so does means what is limiting this compressive stress? If you find that compressive stress acting is governing, that means something must be limiting this compressive stress. So the compressive stress on base plate is limited by what? So we have seen that it is limited by the compressive stress of the concrete. So concrete governs, the compressive stress of the concrete governs how much maximum stress can be allowed at the base plate. And if it is exceeded, what you will do means how will you correct the design? That is more important. So you find that the compressive stress at the base plate is higher than what is allowed. It will crush the concrete. So what is the remedy in the design you should give? So in that case, you'll have to increase the width of the base plate. You have to make it larger so that the compressive stress decreases or the pressure on the foundation decreases. Okay, the second is the design of base plate. Does it depend on size of anchor bolt? Is it true or false? Does the design of base plate dependent on the size of anchor bolt?
It depends upon the size of anchor bolts. So
Okay, how
while
does it depend?
selecting the length L of the
Right.
base plate, we have to consider that it should be able to incorporate the bolt in that. So we should
That is
select
correct.
the length according to that.
Right. So width of base plate should be able to accommodate the anchor bolt as well as the nut by which you are going to tighten it. So it should have sufficient space. That L distance should be large enough so that the nut and nut of the anchor bolt can be tightened. So there should be space for that. Okay, so the second is also correct. Of course, it depends on the wind and seismic load. The third is obviously correct. And the thickness of skirt does not have any direct effect on the design of the base plate. Okay, so I think I will cover the heat exchanger design because we have 15 minutes left. Okay, the next topic that we are discussing is the design of heat exchangers. So here we are talking about the mechanical design of the heat exchangers and not the thermal design, which is a entirely very big topic by itself. The mechanical design of the heat exchangers is essentially similar to that of pressure vessels, except here that because there are two fluids, in order them not to mix, you have to make two independent chambers. So one chamber is called as, for example, in this case, the one chamber is known as channel sections, as it is discussed earlier, and the other section is called as shell. So that is a terminology used in the heat exchanger mechanical design. So you have one chamber which is connected to the inside of the tubes, which is known as channel side, and another compartment or another chamber which is outside, which is connected to the fluid which is outside the tubes. So that is known as shell section. So both these chambers are essentially pressure chambers or pressure components, and their design is done exactly as per the pressure vessels. So what makes what are the unique components in a heat exchanger are the tube sheet and the tubes. And in order to support the tubes, you require some components which are known as baffles. So these are the essentially three different components which are there in the heat exchanger design. And in this calculation, we have seen preliminary design check for tube sheet. So the first part, there are different types of exchangers are discussed. And in this case, we are discussing the shell and tube type of exchangers. So that is the most common type of heat exchanger, which we are discussing in this course. And I already explained the anatomy of the exchanger. So based on service, it can be classified. The design codes are same as that of the process equipment. So they can be designed as per the ASME Section 8 Division 1, which is more common. In addition to that, there is something known as Tubular Exchanger Manufacturers Association or TIMA standard. So these standards give specific design as well as manufacturing guidelines or recommendations for the based on the practical experience of the next, the different parts of the heat exchangers are defined. So main parts are there is a tube bundle which is given by this section, and the tube bundle is surrounded by shell, and either side of the tube bundle you have the two channel sections. So that is the essential anatomy of heat exchanger, and the wall which separates the two chambers is the tube sheet. So tube sheet is the one to which the tubes are attached. So if this is my tube sheet, the tubes would be attached to the tube sheet in this manner. So these are the tubes. So on one side you will have the shell side fluid, and inside the tubes you are having the channel side fluid. And the tube sheet, which is the component which is separating these two fluids from each other, that is the one which is subjected to, because the two fluids are having different pressure. So there is a differential pressure loading acting on that. And because tubes and the shell are having different temperatures, there is a differential expansion. The tube tries to expand by a certain amount, whereas the shell to which the tube sheet is attached, so this is the shell part. So this is at different temperature. The tubes are at different temperature. So there is a differential expansion between the shell and the tube. So this outer part is at, let's say, 100 degrees centigrade. The shell side fluid is saturated water at 100 degrees centigrade. And the tubes are, let's say, it is boiler. So the gas inside is average temperature is 200. So tubes will expand more than that of the shell. And the tube sheet is the one which connects these two components to each other. So the tubes are sort of getting clamped between the colder shell, and that effect needs to be considered, and that load gets transferred to the tube sheet. So that needs to be taken into account. Then there is some TIMA nomenclature. So if you open any heat exchanger drawing, you will find a TIMA type mentioned there. So how to read that is explained in the slides. Then a typical manufacturing sequence is animated in the YouTube movie, which is included in the session. Then also in the drawing, you will find there are TIMA design classes. So class R, class C, and class B, out of which class R is the severest, which needs to be considered in the design. From design point of view in heat exchanger, one part is tube sheet design is very important, and also another very critical part is the tube to tube sheet joint. So the tube to tube sheet joint, as shown here, there are different types of joints. The one which is shown here is known as the expanded joint. So in the expanded joints, in the tube sheet, you are having the grooves, which are shown here by red mark, and the tube is inserted into the tube and then expanded into these grooves. So this expansion can be done either by mechanical. So you will have a mandrel which will which is of tapering size. So as it goes in, it pushes the tubes and expands into these grooves. So the tube sort of gets mechanically locked. It goes into plastic deformation and it gets stuck with the tube sheet. So that is the most economical way of joining the tube to tube sheet. Of course, it has got limitation in terms of strength. So for high pressures, this particular joint cannot be withstood. And also during mechanical expansion, there are chances that you may exert excessive load and there can be some crack formation which may lead to leakage sometime later in the service time. So after a few years or maybe immediately, the failure will start. So in order to have controlled expansion, you use what is known as hydraulically expanded tube to tube sheet joint. So in that case, the philosophy is same, except instead of mechanical mandrel, your hydraulic chamber is formed inside the tube, and then because of hydraulic pressure, the expansion takes place. Both these joints are considered for low to medium pressure exchangers. For high pressure exchangers, for medium to high pressure exchangers, you need to have a more better positive joint. So that joint is considered one of the joint which is considered is the seal weld. So in that case, the tube is seal welded with respect to tube sheet. So that is the seal welded joint. So that is having somewhat better strength than the mechanically expanded joint, or equal strength in some cases, depending on the size of weld that you are giving. If you require further more strength, then you do what is known as strength weld. So in the strength weld, you make initially a groove inside the tube sheet, and then this entire groove as well as the top fillet, they form the tube to tube sheet joint. So this gives you further strength, and based on the depth of this groove, you can have the strength of this joint can be controlled. So that involves some design calculations which are outside this particular course. And in all these joints, that is up to strength weld, there is a shell side fluid which is present here. So it will be under some pressure. So this fluid, it enters into this narrow groove which cannot be completely closed in case of mechanically expanded or whatever joint. So through this groove, the fluid enters into this particular joint and it gets arrested because of either seal weld or because of the mechanical expansion. But the fluid which sips inside, it leads to the corrosion, and then there is some crack formation in the tube, and through which the leakage begins. So the shell side fluid through this crack comes out and mixes with the channel side fluid. So to avoid that, you have some special joints. So that is the internal bore weld, which is explained in the video that I have given. The preliminary check, the design calculations, what you are doing for the tube sheet, they are the preliminary calculations. They are not the actual calculations. The actual calculations run in pages, and that is not required at this level. So essentially, two modes of tube sheet failure are considered. One is because of the mechanical loading and thermal expansion, there is a bending or bulging of the tube sheet which takes place. So that needs to be avoided. And also this load causes shearing of the tube sheet. So these two modes are checked in this formulae, and there are the method I believe is explained in the detailed calculation that I'm giving. One of the important factor considered here is the joint efficiency. So there are typical two types of tube hole layouts: a triangular hole layout or a square hole layout, which are the most common. So depending on pitch of this layout and the size of the tube hole, you have the tube sheet essentially becomes a perforated plate. It has got number of holes inside it. So its strength decreases. So it is something like the ligament efficiency, which we considered in bolted joint calculations. So in similar fashion, the strength of the tube sheet is considered smaller by taking into account this eta, or the efficiency factor. And the efficiency factor for triangular layout and square layout is different as given by this formula. For shear calculation, you are considering what is known as equivalent diameter of the tube center perimeter. So what you see here are the tube hole layouts are typically given in this fashion. So at every intersection, there is tube is present. So that the DL parameter which is used in the calculation is essentially an equivalent diameter, equivalent circle, which encompasses the outermost tubes. So that gives us the idea of how much region of the tube sheet is perforated, and beyond that the region is solid. So this particular dimension is useful in the shear check calculation for the tube sheet. And in order to estimate that, the formula is given in terms of the area enclosed by these outermost tubes and perimeter of these outermost tubes. So this thick black line, whatever is area inside that, that needs to be considered. Of course, in our calculations, we don't have time or skill to develop this tube hole layout. So we have to approximate these parameters. So in actual calculations, the tube hole layout would be made and then the calculations would be done. Or for doing some approximate calculations, which during the estimation stage of the engineering can be done, one uses a method which is given in this bottom part of this slide. So in this case, the DL is approximated as the tube bundle diameter minus D naught, and tube bundle diameter is given in terms of number of tubes, size of tube, and some factors K and N. K and N, which are defined in this particular table. So for triangular layout and square layout, there are different tables, and they give you the value of the K1 and N depending on the number of passes. So heat exchangers, there are single pass exchangers, double pass exchanger, and multi-pass exchangers. So depending on the number of passes, the factors can be determined, and from there, the tube bundle diameter can be estimated. Tube bundle diameter is essentially the enclosed diameter which encompasses the outermost tubes. And once you know the tube bundle diameter, you can calculate DL, and then this calculation can be done. Also, in the previous bending tube sheet in bending calculation, you require the value of shell and channel side diameter. So you require the G, which is the ID of shell or channel. So that also can be estimated based on the tube bundle diameter, and that shell ID or channel ID is given by the formula which is given here. So this formula can be used for both shell and channel. So tube bundle diameter plus twice the outside diameter of tube gives you the shell diameter, which is to be used in the tube sheet thickness calculations. And then we have a numerical problem which addresses this case. So I'm not going through the numerical problem. It is covered in the main video. So I think this is just recently released. So many of you might not have got time to go through that. But any questions based on whatever quick recap I did now? If you have any questions, you can ask.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, in which fashion the plate is bended?
You are asking about the tube sheet bending?
Tube sheet, yes. Tube sheet, yes, sir.
Yeah, so here we are considering the bending of the tube sheet as a whole. So if you are considering this is your tube sheet. So one is shell side, and there are tubes which are attached here. So this is a tube bundle, and this is the tube sheet what we are talking about. So because of the pressure which is acting on the shell side and channel side, let's say the shell side pressure is higher or many times in the heat exchanger design, we assume that because of malfunction, the channel side pressure, one side pressure has become zero, and there is only shell side pressure is acting. So in that case, the tube sheet will have only shell side pressure acting on that, and because of this pressure, this tube sheet will try to bend in this particular manner. So that is what we are talking here. So tube sheet is held at the two ends. So there may be bolted or welded joint at this point. So there is some joint here, which prevent the displacement of the tube sheet, and as a result, the tube sheet bends in the manner which I have drawn. There is some strength which is or resistance provided by the tubes. So generally that effect is ignored because the tube to tube sheet joint is not considered strong to hold this particular bending load. So the tube sheet is made thick enough to take this entire load by itself and not induce any load on the tube to tube sheet joint. If you consider that these tubes are helping the tube sheet not to bend, then the load has to be taken by the tube to tube sheet joint, which is the designer don't consider that. The tube sheet is designed such that without the help of tube strength, the tube sheet is okay. So essentially this is the bending we are talking about, and the shear is also the same. So in this case, the shearing load will be, because of this pressure, there will be shearing of this tube sheet would take place. And that shearing is the one which we are trying to check in the second formula. And because the tube sheet is perforated, the bending stress needs to be corrected because of the presence of or the weakness induced by the holes. So that is why the efficiency factor comes in. So this is bending of a circular plate. So you have not encountered that in your the beam, the strength of material, you are dealing with only beams. So this is bending of plates, which the theory of that you have not learned. So the formula will look a little different. So I have answered your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have another one question. If there is a failure of tube or there is a leakage in shell side, so how can we replace the tube? How can we remove this tube?
No, the tubes are never removed. So the tubes are plugged. So if the leakage is there, which is common after 2 to 3 years of operation, especially for big heat exchangers, which may be having as high as 1,000 number of tubes. So it is near impossible to replace the tube. It will cause more, it can be done in theory, but if you try to do that, it will cause more damage to the surrounding tubes than the actual repair. So the most common way of, or the only way of handling it is by plugging the tubes. So when you are designing the heat exchanger, you have the about 5 to 10% extra tubes are provided. That is whatever by thermal calculations, whatever area you get, you add to that 10% area to take care of the in-service factors, which are nothing but some tubes will leak and you need to plug them. So that much surface area will be reduced. So in any heat exchanger drawing, if you see, you will find that theoretical area and the margin for plugging will be given. So they will state that so many number of tubes can be plugged without affecting the performance of the heat exchanger. So a new heat exchanger will be over-designed in that sense. It will have more thermal surface area than what is required. And during the service, some of the tubes will be plugged, and even after plugging, it will still be able to meet the thermal performance requirements. If the plugging becomes excessive, then you will have to replace the entire tube bundle. So for services which have this repetitive problem, that is, there are certain very corrosive fluid services where you cannot avoid the problem very easily. So in general, you keep a spare heat exchanger ready. So after the problem becomes unmanageable, you replace the heat exchanger with a new heat exchanger or a new tube bundle if the tube bundle is removable. So
Okay,
that
sir.
is the
Fine, sir.
answer. Okay, so we'll stop here. So after this, we are having mainly topics related to piping engineering which are left. So which I'll be covering in maybe by end of next week, we should be able to cover the entire syllabus. Okay, so thank you everybody and take care. Bye.
Thank
So
you, sir. Thank you.
just preserve this link because this now I have shifted from Zoom to this because the college has acquired this Google Meet platform. So we'll be continuing on the Google Meet, and for every Google Meet, the link what I given remains the same. So on the same meeting room, we'll be meeting.